3 days after we buried our parents, my sister stood in the doorway of our childhood home, looked straight at me, and said something I will never forget. Find somewhere else to die. No tears. No hesitation. Just cold certainty. I was still walking with a cane. Still recovering from the accident that nearly ended my life 2 years earlier. And yet, there she was, holding moving boxes. Her husband behind her, already preparing to erase me. My name is Sierra Thompson. I was 34 when that moment happened. And I wish I could say it came out of nowhere. But it didn't. Because some people don't become cruel overnight. They just stop hiding it. 2 years before my parents died, my life looked completely different. I ran a small landscape design business in Hartford. I worked with high-end clients, designed gardens for estates. My calendar was full. My future was clear. Then one night, a drunk driver ran a red light. I don't remember the crash. I remember waking up in a hospital, with metal rods in my spine, and doctors explaining that walking again was not guaranteed. Everything changed after that. My apartment had stairs I couldn't climb. My business needed attention I couldn't give. And medical bills. Don't wait for recovery. So I moved back home. Into the same house where I grew up. The same room with my old trophies still on the shelf. And for the first time since I was a teenager, I needed help with everything. For 18 months, I used a wheelchair. I learned how to move through doorways again. How to ask for help. How to accept it. My mother sat with me on the worst days. Read books out loud when I couldn't focus. My father built a ramp so I could sit outside in the garden. They didn't make me feel broken. They made me feel human. Victoria. She called sometimes. Once a month. Sometimes less. And every time, she said the same thing. Oh, you're still there. Still there. Like I was something temporary. Something that should have disappeared by now. What she didn't know, what she never cared to ask, was that I was getting better. Slowly. Painfully. But I was healing. For months before my parents died, I started walking again. First with a walker. Then with a cane. Every step felt like a victory. But to Victoria, I was already defined. The week one. That Christmas. She came home. Perfect coat. Perfect husband. Perfect children. And a presence that filled every room. She rearranged furniture. Corrected my mother's cooking. Directed everything like it was her stage. I spent 3 days cooking for her kids. Standing in the kitchen with my cane beside me. Back aching. Hands shaking. Just trying to contribute. To matter. On Christmas morning, we gathered for a photo. Tree lit. Everyone smiling. Then Victoria looked at me. And said softly, maybe you should sit this one out. The room went quiet. The cane doesn't really fit the picture, she added. I wasn't even in a wheelchair anymore. But I didn't argue. I never did. I walked into the kitchen instead. And through the window. I watched them take the photo. Without me. I didn't know then. That my father saw everything. And I definitely didn't know what he would do because of it. 3 months later, my parents died in a plane crash. And 3 days after that, my sister told me to leave. But what Victoria didn't know, as she stood there with those boxes, was that my father had already seen her clearly. And he had made a decision that was about to change everything. Victoria didn't wait. She never did. The morning after she told me to leave, she came back with boxes. Not suggestions. Not a conversation. A plan. She dropped them at my feet like it was already decided. Start packing, she said. You have until Friday. Friday. 4 days. 4 days to leave the only place I had left. I gripped my cane tighter. Victoria. I need more time, I said. She laughed. A short, sharp sound. For what? She snapped. To pretend you're still recovering. My chest tightened. I was in a car accident, I said quietly. You know that. That was 2 years ago, she fired back. You've milked it long enough. Behind her, Derek shifted uncomfortably. He didn't agree, but he didn't stop her either. And that told me everything. I heard a sound from the kitchen. Rose, the nurse who had cared for my parents, and Maggie, our neighbor of 40 years. They had both heard everything. Victoria didn't care. She stepped closer, lowered her voice, and said the words that changed everything. Find somewhere else to die. The room froze. Maggie gasped. Rose went still. But Victoria, she didn't even look at them. Because in her mind, they didn't matter. Maggie stepped forward. Slow, controlled, but furious. Your mother would be ashamed of you, she said. Victoria turned. Cold. This is family business. I'm family, Maggie shot back. I was here before you learned to walk. That landed. For a second. Victoria hesitated. Just a second. Then she grabbed Derek's arm. Friday, she repeated. And walked out. The door slammed. Silence filled the house. Maggie squeezed my arm. This isn't over, she said. I wanted to believe her. But I didn't know how. That night, I sat in my father's study. Alone. Trying to understand something that didn't make sense. Victoria said she spoke to the lawyer. But she never said his name. That wasn't like her. Victoria loved details. Loved control. And my parents had used the same attorney for over 20 years. Harold Whitmore. If she had actually spoken to him, she would have said his name. Which meant one thing. She was lying. But the truth was even worse. Because even if she was lying, I still had nothing. No job. No savings. My business was gone. Every dollar I had went into recovery. And now, apparently, no home. I looked around the room. My father's desk. My mother's chair. The window overlooking the garden we built together. This wasn't just a house. It was everything. If I left, I would lose them all over again. That's when I started searching. Drawers. Papers. Anything. Not out of hope. Out of desperation. And then, in the bottom drawer, I found it. A simple business card. Harold Whitmore. Estate attorney. I turned it over. 6 words written in my father's handwriting. Call him. He knows everything. I stared at it. Because my father never wrote notes. Never. So if he wrote this, it meant something. Something important. Something Victoria didn't know. And the next morning, when I finally made that call, the lawyer said something that stopped me cold. I've been expecting you. I didn't sleep that night. The card stayed on the table. My father's handwriting. Burning into my mind. Call him. He knows everything. Everything. That word kept echoing. Because if there was something, anything, that could stop Victoria, this was it. At 9:02 a.m., I made the call. My hand was shaking. The phone rang twice. Then a calm voice answered. Whitmore and Associates. I need to speak with Harold Whitmore, I said. A pause. And you are? I swallowed. Sierra Thompson. Silence. Then, the tone shifted. Please hold. 10 seconds later, another voice came on. Older. Steady. Sierra, he said. Not questioning. Certain. I've been expecting your call. My heart stopped. Expecting me? I asked. Yes, he said calmly. Your father told me you would reach out, if necessary. If necessary. I didn't like the sound of that. Can you come in today? He asked. Yes, I said immediately. Good, he replied. Bring nothing. Just yourself. 2 hours later, I sat in his office. Dark wood. Organized shelves. Everything precise. Unlike the chaos I had just left behind. He studied me for a moment. Then nodded. You look stronger than he expected, he said. I didn't know how to respond to that. He opened a folder. Thick. Your parents' will has already been filed, he said. I know, I replied. Victoria said everything was left to her. He didn't react. Didn't argue. He simply slid the document across the table. Read it. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I scanned the first page. Then the second. Then I stopped. Because what I was reading didn't match what Victoria said. At all. There's a mistake, I whispered. No, he said calmly. There isn't. I looked up at him. This says the house is in a trust, I said. Yes. And it names me. I paused. As the primary beneficiary. The room went silent. My heart started racing. That's not possible, I said. Victoria said. Victoria said what benefited her, he interrupted gently. I flipped through the pages again. Details I had never seen. Legal language. Clauses. Conditions. But one thing was clear. The house wasn't hers to take. She can't force you out, he said. The words hit hard. Like something unlocking. For as long as you live there, he continued. The property remains protected under the trust. Protected. I sat back slowly. Because for the first time in days, I could breathe. But there's more, he added. Of course there was. He turned to another page. This clause, he said, was added 6 months ago. 6 months. Right after Christmas. Right after that photo. I leaned forward. What does it say? He looked at me carefully, then said the words that changed everything. If any beneficiary attempts to remove you from the property, they forfeit their entire inheritance. Silence. Heavy. Complete. Because suddenly, everything made sense. My father saw it. Saw her. And made sure. She couldn't get away with it. I looked up slowly. What happens now? I asked. A small smile crossed his face. Now, he said. We wait. Because when Victoria came back to that house, ready to throw me out, she had no idea. She was about to lose everything. Victoria didn't wait until Friday. She came back the next morning. Earlier than expected. More aggressive than before. 2 movers stood behind her. That told me everything. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was execution. Let's not drag this out, she said, stepping inside like she already owned the place. Derek followed. Quieter this time. Start with the bedroom, she told the movers. They hesitated. Looked at me. I didn't move. Didn't argue. I simply reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Then I pressed record. Victoria, I said calmly. Before you do anything, you should listen carefully. She rolled her eyes. I don't have time for this. I went to see Harold Whitmore, I continued. That stopped her. Just for a second. Then she laughed. And, she said, he confirmed what I already told you. No, I said quietly. He didn't. Silence. The movers looked at each other. Derek stepped forward slightly. What are you talking about? He asked. I held up the phone. According to the will, I said. This house is in a trust. Victoria's expression flickered. And I'm the primary beneficiary. The room went still. That's not true, she snapped. It is, I replied. Then I added. And there's a clause. That word hit hard. What clause? Derek asked. I looked directly at Victoria. If anyone tries to remove me from this house. I paused. They lose everything. Silence. Heavy. Complete. Victoria stared at me. Like she was trying to decide if this was real. Or if she could still control it. You're lying, she said finally. I shook my head. You can call him, I said. Right now. Derek pulled out his phone. Stepped aside. Dialed. The room held its breath. He listened. Said nothing. Then slowly lowered the phone. And looked at Victoria. It's real, he said. 3 words. That ended everything. Victoria's face changed. Not anger. Not shock. something worse. Realization. Because in that moment, she understood. This wasn't about the house anymore. It was about everything she stood to lose. The movers stepped back. No one gave them instructions. No one needed to. Victoria turned to me. You planned this, she said. I shook my head. No, I replied. Dad did. That landed. Because for the first time, she couldn't rewrite the story. She grabbed her purse. Turned sharply. Let's go, she snapped at Derek. But he didn't move right away. He looked at me. Then at the house. Then back at her. And something in his expression shifted. Quiet. But clear. Victoria didn't wait. She walked out. Fast. Like staying 1 second longer would make it worse. The door slammed. And just like that, it was over. The house fell silent. Not empty. Peaceful. I stood there for a long moment. Looking around. The same walls. The same light. But everything felt different. Not because I had one, but because I was no longer being pushed out of my own life. Later that evening, I sat in the garden. The one my father built. The one my mother loved. And for the first time since they were gone, I didn't feel like I was losing them. I felt like they had protected me, even when they weren't here. Weeks later, Victoria tried to call. I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but because I understood something now. Some doors don't need to be reopened. Today, I still walk with a cane. Still healing. But I'm standing. In my home. In my life. On my terms. So let me ask you. If someone tried to erase you from your own life, would you fight to stay? Or walk away and rebuild everything? Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is refuse to move. When someone expects you to disappear,